Curran.
Mr Chair, returning to the core part of what this bill is about, which is about the public good, and before this debate is out, I'd be very keen for the Minister to respond to the question that's been put to him on a number of occasions as to why it is, with 83,000 households that don't receive Sky television, and yet the fact that this bill is aimed at providing archived works which are made available to the whole of New Zealand, why it is that they won't be able to get access to them. And I'd like to ask the Minister to actually respond to that before this debate is out. As of the 30th of June 2010, last year, Sky had a total of 802,397 subscribers, and at that time, the number of households in New Zealand was 1,632,200, which meant that 83,000 of those households don't get Sky, which is equivalent to around 2 million New Zealanders. And that is very important, Mr Chair, because it's about equity, it's about the public good, and it's about who gets to see these important archived works, which are supposed to be, they're the substance of this bill, but they are the essence of what makes us New Zealanders in our past and how we have come to develop. And the claim that it's in the public interest that they be seen again is really made a mockery of since the Heartland channel was launched, which is now exclusively for Sky to screen heritage programming. And as a number of the speakers tonight and previously have mentioned, those heritage programs were made, they were all made paying licence fees, so in fact the public had already paid for the production of those programs through their fees and their taxes, and now they're having to pay Sky for the privilege of watching them again, and the Sky shareholders get to reap the rewards of them. And I know that a number of my colleagues have mentioned some of those programs, and I'm going to mention them again. One of them is actually very dear to my heart, and I've launched a bit of a campaign to try and attract him to come back home over the ditch, and that's John Clark, or Mr John Clark, as he's described on Twitter, where we have the occasional conversation, aka Fred Dagg. He is a cultural icon in New Zealand, and he's become a cultural icon in Australia, and it's a damn shame that he didn't stay in New Zealand. And if it wasn't for our gumboots, where would we be, Mr Chair? I won't be singing in this house. So I'd like to pay special tribute to Fred Dagg, because he is, I suppose, I would say that there'd be a few people in this house, on this side of the house anyway, that would put their hands up if you said, do you model yourself on him? Then there's the Lynn of Tawa. Well, there's also the Trevs, I have to say, and we've got at least one of those on this side of the house, although he claims that he's not one of those Trevs. Then there's Lynn of Tawa, David McPhail and John Gadsby, Billy T. James, who brought Māori comedy to the fore in the early 1980s. And then there was our first enduring situation comedy, Gliding On. And then there was those iconic programs, some of which have been mentioned, Pukumanu, Close to Home, Gloss and Shortland Street. Can't say I spend a lot of time watching Shortland Street, don't get much time to do that. But there are many other award-winning efforts. Where are they now? Where are those sort of programs now? Where is the will to make those sort of programs in this country? And I'm interested to hear a bit more from the Minister talking about that. The point is that was critical television during an important time in our heritage, and it should be an important time now. And instead, there is very little likelihood of those sorts of programs, or very few of them, being made again in this country. Mr. Chair, removing the Charter, removing the important Television New Zealand Charter is the reason why Labour opposes this bill. And may I say that it was extraordinary that this minister got up in this House and talked about it making an honest broadcaster out of TVNZ. And somebody said to me today that that's like taking the same moral grounding as a pimp welcoming the legalisation of prostitution. If the Minister of Broadcasting is interested in being honest, then can he show us where in National's manifesto for 2008 there was any indication that the Charter and TVNZ 6 and 7 would be scrapped? Could he explain why he continues to refuse to release the documents outlining TVNZ's proposals for investment in TVNZ 7 and the TVNZ business plans for 2010 and 2011? And if he's interested in being honest, what has he got to hide, and why at the 2010 Sparta conference he indicated that he wanted to retain TVNZ 7. What happened? Got rolled. Well, what else is it that we are to think? And it is, as I said in my first reading speech on this, second reading speech on this bill, there is significant weakness here. And can he also tell us whether he genuinely agrees with his cabinet colleagues who opposed the continuation of the funding for TVNZ 7, and why he continues to ignore the concerns of those 61 academic researchers who took an unprecedented step of writing an open letter and calling for a public debate on public broadcasting issues, a really important debate on public broadcasting issues, or why he tried to mislead the public in the ambiguity of the findings of the watered-down officials' report on broadcasting competition, and why he in his government ditched the digital review in 2009. Why not open up these issues for proper debate when all of the arguments and the evidence and the public interest and the public good can be given proper consideration? Surely a government that's too scared to look at the evidence can hardly claim to be interested in honesty. The minister said that the only alternative, I think he said that the only alternative to scrapping that charter was to fully fund Television New Zealand at a rate of $300 million a year. Now that's absolute rubbish, and he knows that. And Heartland, under his watch, we've seen Television New Zealand close down. We know that Television New Zealand 7 is facing closure. And although, and if you did the calculations, it would only cost 1 cent per person per day to save them, which is actually less than I think it's been calculated as being less than a cup of coffee per year per person. Heartland, again, has appeared exclusively on Sky. Mr. Chair, there have been some really important and quite significant and quite disturbing issues raised during this debate. The Minister has suggested that the opposition missed the announcement on the radio spectrum licence fee deferrals in 2009, but when that decision was announced, it came in the context of several smaller broadcasters that were finding times tough in the recession. And what wasn't apparent until very recently was the scale of that MediaWorks deal. And if the government was being open and honest, as they claim they have been throughout this debate, why didn't it reveal the real reasons behind the deferral decisions? And it was only when those recent OIA documents were made available that it became apparent that the government had bent over backwards to ignore the advice of its own advisers in the Treasury and the Ministry of Economic Development, and the real reason...
The Honourable Dr. Jonathan